Welcome back to the She Inspires podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jade, board certified family medicine physician, wellness and weight loss specialist, owner of the membership medical practice in Las Vegas, Inspire Primary Care. And I'm so excited about today's topic. And it is this concept of not if, but how. Not if, but how. This is a mindset that I live by, and I want to talk to you guys about it because I have been blessed to do things that I would dream of, and people would hear me say that I wanted to do them, and they thought I was crazy. And now I'm in this season of living in my answered prayers. And it really has been number one, God, okay? And number two, the not if, but how mindset. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Some things I never say is can't. Like the word can't isn't even in my vocabulary. And there is nothing that drives me more and lights a fire under me more than someone telling me what I can't do. Shout out to my preschool teacher at 4 years old when I told her I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. She was my first person in my life that told me that I could not do that. And when I would think about her through my journey of struggling and thinking about quitting medicine, and then I would flash back to my preschool teacher telling me I couldn't be a doctor. And honey, she is a part of why I am here today. I would just use that as fuel. So I never, ever think of the word can't. Okay. I do not really do that. Instead, I think of how. How can I do that? I try to change can't or if to how. So I was listening to a talk the other day, and it was this guy that is well known. His name is Myron Golden. You can feel how you want to feel about him. I really enjoy some of his content about financial literacy, if you will. And he went through a talk about something very similar, eliminating if and replacing it with how. And I said to myself, I do that. I've done that quite a bit in my life. And I wanted to break down 4 different areas that I really think of this not if, but how mindset. And I hope that it will be helpful to you all. I want you to be thinking about this as I go through the different areas. Do you do this? Do you apply these type of questions? Do you apply this type of mindset? Could you incorporate this more for yourself? So let's jump into it. All right. So not if, but how. First area that I do this in is my family and personal life. My family and personal life. So here's an example of a couple of not if, but how scenarios that I do in my personal life and family life. So for example, when I was starting medical school, people were like, don't get married until after medical school. Medical school is so hard as it is. Don't get married during medical school. So I said to myself, well, how can I get married in medical school and still be successful and graduate on time? How can I do that? And that's what I did. My husband and I, we got married my second year of medical school. It probably was my third year of medical school. He's better at the dates than me. We met my second year of medical school. We got married my third year of medical school. But the point is, we did it and I finished on time and I did things well and I did just fine because it wasn't oh, sorry, I can't marry you until I'm done with medical school because it's going to be too distracting and all these things people were telling me. Instead, I said, well, how can I do that? How can I get married, finish medical school successfully, and for it to actually be something that's helpful on my medical journey instead of distracting like other people have tried to convince me of, okay? Here's another example. On my journey, people would tell me once I got into residency, so now medical school is behind me, now we're going into residency, people told me, do not have kids during residency. You're working 80 plus hours a week, you're doing night shifts, day shifts, you're on call, you're holding the pager, you're delivering babies in the middle of the night. Do not have kids in residency. It is impossible, okay? You can't do it. This is what people would tell me. So I said to myself, well, how can I have children during residency? How can I do that and still do all that I need to do to meet my physician residency requirements, to graduate residency on time, to learn what I need to learn in residency? But that actually is an optimal age range for me to have children. How can I do that? And people told me, do not have children, especially the first year of residency, intern year. And I said, well, that would be a great year for my marriage. That would be a great year for my age to have that baby during intern year. So how can I do that and still survive and still thrive? And so that's what we did. We had Ava, our intern year of residency. Was it challenging? Yes. Did we survive and make it work? Yes. Was I able to be a resident and a mom and be pregnant on rounds? And while, giving people CPR in the emergency room, was I able to do that? Yeah, I was able to, right? Because it wasn't a if, it wasn't a can't, it was a how. And yes, and then we had Aaliyah, our second baby, right after our third year. So my third year of residency, I was pregnant throughout as well. And of course, this could also transition into opening the practice 8 weeks when she was 8 weeks old, right? How can we do that? So that transitions me into professional. Okay, so those are some examples of how I, in my family, personal life, how I transitioned that mindset of not if, but how. All right. So how are you doing that with your family life, with your personal life? When people are saying there are certain things that are challenging that you really desire and you feel really called to, how could you shift that not if, but how mindset in your favor? All right, so let's shift to professional. Here's some questions that came up for me during my journey. So people would tell me, one, that I couldn't open a medical practice straight from residency with very little to no money. All right. People told me you can't do that. You can't open, not only can you not open a practice, you definitely can't open a practice that doesn't take insurance and do a membership model. Like, who does that? All right. So they told me I couldn't do that. And then, of course, I was pregnant. I had just had a baby. My baby was 8 weeks old. And they were like, you are a mom with an 8-week-old and a 2-year-old. You can't do that. Like, you just can't. Like, that's too much for one human. So I said to myself, well, I know that that's what God called me to. All right. So how can I do this? How can I open a successful medical practice straight from residency with very little money, taking out no loans with a 2-year-old and an 8-week-old? How can I do that? And I explored that, right? And that's what we did with Inspire Primary Care. So here's another one. Someone told me, well, if you open a practice like this, expect that you won't make any money for the first 2 to 3 years. And I said to myself, well, how can my business cross 6 figures within 2 years? How can we do that? How can our business cross multiple 6 figures within the first 5 years, right? And we've done that. And so it's because I really believe, in addition to God, I'm always going to say that's number one, but I also believe having this how, not if mindset has been helpful. And then same thing with our first hire. I looked at the numbers on the paper and I'm like, doesn't look like we can afford a new employee yet, although I'm busy and I need some help. So I said to myself, how can I afford a new hire? Which, of course, I've shared on the podcast, ended up being for starting her off on Mondays and Fridays and then adding more shifts as the business grew. So not if, but how. Are you using this in your professional life? What are some ways you could implement this mindset shift in your professional life? All right, so let's go to the third area. You guys know I'm going to do this area. That is wellness, okay? So these are some areas and some questions where I've had the not if, but how mindset when it comes to my wellness. So people would tell me, oh, well, don't expect to get back to like your pre-pregnancy weight. Like nobody does that. You may try to lose some weight, but it's just once you have kids, you're kind of done, right? And so I said, well, how can I transition back to my healthy weight after having the babies? How I gained 60 pounds after the 2 girls, and that wasn't a healthy weight on my frame, but how can I get to a healthy weight? All right. Even if it's not exactly my pre-pregnancy weight, but the healthiest weight for my body in this season, how can I do that? All right. And that really opened up the possibility of now transitioning and losing that 60 pounds. And most importantly, being strong and fit and feeling well. Right. And so how could I do that? And that's what we explored. And yes, a part of that not only was putting myself on my personalized wellness plan, the Inspired Health Method, which we do here at Inspire Primary Care, but also putting myself on my medical weight loss program, which is very successful here at Inspire Primary Care, seeing how I created that strategy and structure for my patients and then saying, well, this last 15 to 20 pounds just literally will not go away, no matter how healthy I eat, no matter how much I exercise. All right, let's also utilize a tool that that you've mastered, which is our medical weight loss program. And so it wasn't if, but how. How can I do that? And that was a part of our how, a part of my personal how with my wellness, okay? And so let's transition to the final area, financial. And I know I don't talk about this that much on the podcast, and not as much as I would like to, but financial wellness is so important for our overall wellness. And having a not if, but how mindset around financial wellness has been so important for me. So here are some examples of how I've utilized the not if but how mindset when it comes to financial wellness in our household and in our lives. So, for example, when we were house hunting, so after residency, we're back in Las Vegas, back in my hometown. We're ready to purchase our first home. And, although I tried to, I'm just going to be honest. I really like fancy things. I like a nice house. There was a certain thing, and what my husband's a pastor, and he said, you know what? Let's write down everything we truly desire for our home. Let's write it down. Let's pray over it. Let's sketch out the house. And so that's what we did. So I wrote down all these how many bedrooms I wanted, what I wanted the backyard to look like, how I wanted to host in the home, who we wanted to be able to have the room to host, right? So we did all these things. And then we found our realtor. We went all around the city. And eventually we found this home that literally fit all of the criteria, all of the things we wrote down, prayed over to a T. But we looked at how much that house cost, and most people would have said, oh, we can't afford that. But for me, I said to myself, how can we afford this house? How can we do that? And of course, we prayed, and we found out how we could afford that house. And so now we are living in our dream home, right? And so that mindset, though, not walking into that home and being like, oh, we can't afford this. Go show me something else. Go show me something smaller. That just wasn't a part of how my mind works, okay? And so here's another one. People will go on vacation, and was recently watching Instagram, and there was this amazing vacation of this person that I follow, and I said to myself, how can I budget for that vacation? That's literally what came to my mind. It wasn't like, oh, I can't do that. I can't go there. That sounds too expensive. It's, how can I budget to go there? That looks amazing. That's something that I'd love to do. How can I invest that much? I'm very much in a season of investing, and how can I retire by 50? And these are just things that are on my mind, right? If I wanted to. And so how can I invest that much? How can I put that much into that retirement account? How can I retire by that age if I wanted to? These are things that I'm thinking about actively in this season. And so I hope these would be helpful to you. I want you to just ask yourself, are you utilizing this type of mindset with your family and personal life, with your professional life, with your wellness, with your finances? Are you utilizing a not if, but how? Are you using the word can't? Because, for example, I had a patient come to my practice the other day. She wanted to join, or she did join our medical weight loss program. She just had a baby, and she's trying to transition back to her healthy weight range. But the first thing she said to me is, I already know I can't get back to my pre-pregnancy weight. I just want to lose 15 pounds. And in my mind, I was like, of course you won't get back to your pre-pregnancy weight because you just said it. If you just say, how can I get back to my pre-pregnancy weight? If that's what her healthy weight is, that opens up a whole different level of possibility. It just literally is a game changer. So I really want to just encourage us to take on this not if, but how mindset. It doesn't have to be in the areas that I mentioned specifically. These are things that I really value, but in the things that you really value, that you think you're called to, that you are really passionate about, not if, but how. How can that happen? Please leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know of some areas, if there are any other areas that you are utilizing a not if, but how mindset, or that you will start utilizing a not if, but how mindset. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please drop a comment below. I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from? Leave a review of the podcast. Let us know how we're doing, all right? Share the podcast with other busy professional women in your life. If you have a product or service that other busy professional women would benefit from hearing about, reach out to us about becoming an episode sponsor and join our social media family on Instagram and on YouTube at Dr. Jade MD. And we'll see you on the next episode of the She Inspires podcast.